God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege, and this is the Protege program. I saw this headline on the Yahoo homepage as I was checking some emails last night, and I just knew that I was going to have to talk about it because it's going to be full of mischaracterizations, maybe even some outright lies. So let's get into it. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll leave a like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video in the future. Now, the legislation that I think this writer, Rick Newman, is talking about is the House bill. I am planning on doing a video about the Senate bill that I think is going to the floor in the near future, perhaps even before the Thanksgiving recess. We'll just have to wait and see on that one. But I'm interested to see what details there will be to reconcile between the two bills coming up. So let's look here. The biggest winners from big tax cut legislation Congress could pass by the end of the year will be the shareholder class. All right, so when you think of shareholder class, who do you think of? Just take a couple moments, get a picture in your mind, maybe even some names if you're savvy in that regard. Who do you think of as the shareholder class? And I know the first thing that I think of is the people that make their living off of the stock market. People that buy and sell stock, and that's how they feed their families and pay their expenses and things like that. Making a more robust and growth-oriented economy is therefore going to benefit the shareholder class. That's what you're supposed to think when you read that the shareholder class is going to benefit. People who own stocks and stakes in privately held companies. That's because roughly 75% of the $1.5 trillion in net tax cuts being proposed would accrue to businesses. Wealthy families would get an additional break from killing the estate tax, leaving less than one-fourth of the net tax cut flowing directly to individual taxpayers and even less to the middle class. Now, let's talk about a couple of those things real quick. When a business gets a tax cut, what does that mean? Immediately, a business gets a tax cut and a business has more revenue. It's sending less money to the federal government, therefore its profit margin is larger. What do businesses do with profit margins? I'm reminded of a capitalist propaganda cartoon that I recently had the pleasure of watching, and I think that I'm going to find a way to integrate it into this channel, or maybe get a video of it up somehow, because it is extremely educational in just the basic ways that capitalism works. Businesses, and particularly business owners, whenever they have a pile of money, and this pile of money is called profits, they don't get to just sit on it and be rich. That's not how capitalism works, because they have to pay employees, they have to pay taxes, they have to pay maintenance on equipment, facilities, they have to pay accountants and lawyers, they have to pay for all kinds of things. And after all of those things get paid for, then the CEOs and the people that run the business get their paychecks. So when a business has more revenue, what does that mean? That means that they have more money to pay in wages, more money to spend on maintenance, more money to spend on research and development, something I forgot to mention earlier. And when a business spends money on research and development, that goes to getting a better product at a better price for the consumer. Now, that's one thing that socialists just totally overlook when it comes to competition in capitalism. Competition is good for the consumer. Competition is bad for the business owner, for the CEO, for the corporate bigwig. That's why Mr. Rockefeller is famously quoted as saying, competition is a sin. Because competition is good for the consumer, not good for the businessman. So when a business has more money with which to compete, the consumer is going to be the person that benefits. And who is the vast majority of consumers? It's the middle class. So when the consumer benefits, the middle class benefits. So to say that less of the benefit of this tax break is going to go to the middle class is disingenuous. Let's talk about the estate tax real quick. The estate tax is not just on the wealthy. The estate tax is on the net worth of people as they expire from the mortal plane. That's how I understand the estate tax works. If you die and leave $100,000 to your progeny, then that gets taxed at whatever the estate tax rate is. Not just the guy that dies and leaves $14 million to his kid, but you, when you die and your net worth gets distributed to your progeny, it all gets taxed at the estate tax rate. I'm pretty sure it's how it works. And then the people that have more to leave to their progeny get, I want to say, I think I heard that there was two brackets of death tax, but I'm not really sure what that is. There are a lot of middle-class families that own stocks, of course. That's called everybody that works. The shareholder class includes virtually everybody with a 401k, which is everybody that works, which is everybody in the middle class. Pension or other retirement plan that invests in public equities. That still represents a majority of Americans. Gallup's latest survey shows that 54% of Americans have some sort of stock market investment. Now, I wonder how that number is calculated, because if you work in the private sector, you have a 401k, you have a retirement package of some kind that invests in the stock market. Even if you work in the public sector, you have a retirement account that invests in a growth equity fund, which is code for stock market, basically. And if you work in a household where maybe one person works a full-time job and other people work part-time jobs, the people that work part-time jobs aren't going to have any investment in the stock market, but the person whose retirement the household is going to live on when the person retires does have investment in the stock market. So I wonder how the number of Americans that have a stock market investment relates to the number of households that has a stock market investment, because I would be willing to bet money on the number of households being much, much closer to super majority levels of investment. That's the smallest portion of Americans owning stocks since Gallup started asking the question in 92. In 2002, 67% of Americans own stocks, with the percentage gradually drifting down since then. And that's consistent with the decline in the marketplace, job participation. If you if you don't have money to save, if you don't have enough disposable income that you can save money, then you don't have any money to put into an investment portfolio that includes stocks. And as the economy has been on the decline, of course, fewer people have money to have disposable income to invest. And if people don't have as much disposable income, they're probably going to have to draw on their savings. And if they're out of a job, then they're probably drawing on their retirement savings. They probably don't roll those savings over into a Roth IRA. They just pull it out because they're going to have to live off of it, because they're out of a job, because the economy is down. So a small number of Americans having a stake in the stock market is consistent with a poor economy. Republicans aren't characterizing their legislation as windfall for investors. Instead, they're emphasizing the direct and indirect benefits to middle-class families, even though those are modest at best. In 2018, a middle-income tax filer would save about $830 per year under the tax plan the House passed on November 16th. Now, I don't know about, Mr. Rick Newman, but I would appreciate an extra $830 a year. I don't know what ivory tower Rick Newman is living in, but $830 would be $830 extra dollars in my pocket would be nice. But that would decline to just $360 in annual tax savings by 2027. You say that like it's a bad thing, as if $360 is not greater than zero. I mean, that's a benefit, is it not? And in regards to the expiring tax cuts for individual taxpayers, that has to be included in all Republican tax plans because the budget rules are crap. The budget rules that the Democrats have Republicans over a barrel on mandate that tax cuts have expiration dates. And the Republicans just put the maximum expiration date on there. And the hope is that the economy is doing so well by the time the expiration date comes up that it is easy for the Senate and the House to legislate those expiration dates away and push the expiration dates farther down the road. I'm going to do a video. I'm deciding right now, sometime in the future, I'm going to do a video on mandatory expiration dates for tax cuts and ask the question, why do we have to have these expiration dates? But I don't want to do that today. We could spend a lot of time talking about that. Will tax cuts boost the economy? Republicans also claim their tax cuts will boost economic growth enough to raise the after-tax earnings of middle-class family anywhere from $1,200 to $1,400. I'm assuming that's per year, but that's dubious. There's scant evidence that tax cuts alone have ever boosted economic growth. Well, okay, sure, tax cuts alone maybe doesn't do the kind of economic growth that Republicans are talking about. But exclude, I'm sure that what they say when they say there's scant evidence is they say, forget Ronald Reagan ever happened. There's no evidence, and then say there's no evidence that conservative economics works. Go back to Bill Clinton. There's no evidence that conservative economics boosts the economy. And despite the fact that the economic plan that Reagan implemented was so successful that even Bill Clinton did all of the stuff that he did, and there were no repercussions until Bush Jr. was flailing about in his second term in office. By some measures, the middle-class Americans getting a tax cut next year would get a de facto tax increase in a few years as key provisions expire and negative effects of a larger national debt take their toll. Now, what are the negative effects of a larger national debt? Because nobody cared a whit about a larger national debt when Obama passed 3 freaking stimulus bills. $1 trillion stimulus bill. Nobody was whinging about a larger national debt, especially in the mainstream media, when Obama was doubling the national debt. I'm sorry if I'm yelling, but this is BS. The Democrats have no leg to stand on when it comes to whinging about the national debt because their president doubled the national debt. Barack Obama accrued more debt on the United States of America than all of the previous presidents combined. Don't give me this negative effects of larger national debt crap. A full decade, because you can include the bailout that George Bush passed in 2008 as part of the Obama stuff, because it was the Democrat Congress that wanted it, and it was a liberal Republican that capitulated to it. The negative effects of a larger national debt have not been felt by the American people. I would have to say that this is the case, because we've doubled the national debt and there have been no negative effects that people are whinging about, especially you Democrats, all throughout Obama's tenure as president. De facto tax increase is one way of saying the taxes are going to be lower than they were before this bill, but then they go up and still be lower than they were before this bill. Now, I happen to know a thing or two about these de facto tax increases because I got to listen to Paul Ryan answer a question about them on Rush Limbaugh's program. He's talking again about the expirations. You know, a paragraph earlier he said something about expirations, and a paragraph later he's calling it a de facto tax increase, which is to say that we have a tax level now that is high, and we will have a tax level after this bill passes that is low, and after some of the tax decreases expire, we will have a tax rate that is somewhere in the middle, and therefore it's a de facto tax increase. Never mind the fact that tax rates will still be lower than they are now. Never mind the fact that Congress has no the word escapes me right now. The Congress has no intention of allowing those tax expirations to happen. But we have to talk about it like it's a guaranteed thing. You know, the Bush-era tax cuts had expiration dates on them too. The hope of Republicans was that in a decade, when they were going to expire, the Republicans would still have control of Congress and they would be able to extend those tax cuts. It was Democrats in Congress that allowed the tax cuts to expire and therefore increased taxes on Americans. By the same token, if this tax plan gets passed with these 10-year expiration dates on the tax plans, and in 10 years, Democrats are in control of Congress, then it will again fall on Democrats to stop those tax increases from happening, which they will not do. And I assume that they will point the finger at Republicans and say, it's their expiration dates, it's their fault that these taxes are going up. No. Don't pretend like an expiration date on tax cuts is Republicans' fault, because I guarantee you it's these crap Democrat budget rules that mean we have to have these things in place. Okay. We have trillions of dollars things talking about again. Let's get on to this paragraph about businesses. Businesses would benefit from slashing the corporate tax rate to 20% from 30%. This would push up the after-tax income for many firms. We've talked about what that means. Other provisions would add more to the bottom line as well. Talked about what that means. Tax repatriation holiday, allowing U.S. firms to bring home foreign profits at a one-time tax rate between 10 and 14%. Since there would be no rules on what firms must do with repatriated profits, they'd likely spend at least some of it boosting dividends and repurchasing stock, moves that usually send stock prices higher. Now, you assume that boosting dividends and repurchasing stock is the only thing that these businesses would do. And you get away with that because you're writing this column. But you know what permanently and legitimately pushes stock prices higher is the improvement of a company. You know, Apple doesn't push its stock prices higher and higher every single quarter by boosting dividends and repurchasing stock. Now, they do it by releasing bigger and better products. Every time the iPhone sells at or above its projected numbers, its stock price goes up. That's called real improvement in a business. And they don't get to do that without spending that money on basically the consumers, on making products that consumers want to buy. and some of the ways of doing that is by making a better product, or by making a product in a better way so that it's cheaper for the consumer to purchase. I'm gonna keep going before I yell again. Wall Street analysts differ on how much of the business tax cuts are baked into current equity valuations. I would assume not at all, because you don't get to factor into your business value a lot of projection, I would assume. The outlook for stocks during the next year or two is remarkably bullish for a stock that is in its 9th year of expansion. I would point out that its 9th year of expansion doesn't actually mean a whole lot. We're in the 9th year of expansion. After 2008/2009, we ought to be in 9 years of expansion. But the rate of which the stock market has been expanding has been the most anemic recovery since FDR got his hands on the presidency. There was not a single quarter of 3% growth under Obama. Let that sink in. That's part of the reason why we've been under 9 years of growth, is because we've been growing so stinking slow. Numerous forecasts are predicting double-digit gains, yada, yada, yada. The outlook for middle-class prospects, meh. Moody's Analytics forecasts wage growth of just 3.2% per year through 2019, which is surprisingly weak, given that the unemployment rate is almost as low as it can get. Mark Zandi, the firm's chief economics, predicts that families earning less than $150,000 will keep an extra $500 per year under the GOP tax cuts, but Moody's also predicts that middle-class families will save less in coming years if they want to keep buying stuff at the prevailing rate, since earnings will barely keep pace with inflation. Lucky are those with a few bucks left to invest in the stock market. Now, the assumption is that the economy and therefore businesses are not going to improve in such a way that people will be able to earn more money. It's another one of those communist assumptions where we're just going to assume that businesses are just going to make this extra money and then sit on it, which is not the way that the economy works. You know, if businesses are making products that cost the consumer so much money, is it not better for those businesses to pay their workers more so that their workers can buy more of their product? Like I said in a previous video, the kind of communistic outlook that you have to use to analyze the economy and analyze these types of tax plans just breaks down when you just play through the assumption a little bit. Now, that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you will leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Hit the bell for notifications so that you don't miss a single video. I'm looking forward to this holiday weekend, but I am planning on having videos scheduled to go up Thursday for sure. Friday, still haven't decided if I'm going to do a new video on Friday or record something ahead of time. If you want to have an input on that, let me know in the comments. Until next time, good night, and God bless.